Welcome, everybody, to Prepare to Read. My name is Marcos, and I'm here with my co host, Jacob. Today, we're going to be reviewing part one of Way of Kings. But first, what is your experience with Stormlight Archives, Jacob?
I haven't read anything other than what I have read now, which makes complete sense. First time reader. We're through
That
part
was
one.
insightful.
Yeah, it was. I've only read what I've read. Uh, yeah, so never really got into the series before. I know a little bit about it from you reading it, and that's it. We're just figured if we're gonna do this, why not do a podcast?
Yeah, so I've read through the books maybe a year ago, so I would kind of consider this my second read through. But I recommended it to Jacob. We wanted to start to do a book review podcast, and we thought, well, what better series to start with than one of the main series out right now? And also, the new book is coming out at the end of the year, so it was just really good timing all around. So for this review, we're going to be using the Rambler rating from 2 to Ramble. And for that rating system, we're going to be talking through a couple of different categories: the emotional impact, characters, plot, dialogue slash prose, and the world building slash magic system. So we'll assign a rating to each of those categories. And then at the end, we'll give our overall rating for this section of the book. And once again, this is part one. There's going to be spoilers. I would say light spoilers. We're not going to get into anything too specific. But if you do want more of a chapter by chapter discussion, you could check out our channel where we're also reviewing it every week, chapter by chapter. Yeah, but go ahead and start us off, Jacob, with emotional impact.
So I'm gonna give emotional impact a 7 out of 10. I think it did a great job of making me feel things in the beginning. By the way, this is spoiler filled, so FYI, I think anybody who's gonna listen to this is already okay with that. But yeah, so the beginning we get the prelude of the 10 heralds, I guess, deciding to, hey, we're gonna leave that one dude stuck in wherever they go, um, and the dude's like this decision's weighing on him. You can tell, and just everything there hit exactly as it was supposed to. So that right there, and then the prologue too. Even though I didn't love Zeth, right? Zeth.
Yes.
Um, I think that hit really well too. And then we kind of went on like a lull for a little bit there, which I think just came from introductions. And I've seen so many introductions to fantasy characters before where it's just like, I'm ready to, like, let's move through. Let's move through. Give me to what the meat of this is. But at the end, with Kaladin kind of struggling with his depression and almost suicide, I got reeled back in emotionally and became really invested in Kaladin, and I'm looking forward to his journey moving forward. So that's why I gave it the 7 out of 10. Just some things didn't work for me. Like, we kind of talked about the wonder that you're supposed to feel with Shallan going through the city. It didn't capture me as much as when I read, I don't know, Hunger Games and you get to the capital did. So yeah. What
Yeah,
about you?
I agree with that. I feel like Shallan, the first introduction chapter with her was cool, like first getting to the city, because everything was new. But after that, her chapters kind of slowed down a bit. It's like, hey, I'm just gonna wait in this room until this girl talks to me. I'm gonna find. Is there a latency thing?
No,
Okay.
I was just thinking about we're saying, like, did this meet the intent that Brandon Sanderson was trying to do feelings wise, right? And the one thing I think about Shalon is everybody saying she's funny.
Oh,
she just she just never made me laugh ever.
yeah. Shit, it's coming. She'll make you laugh eventually. Every week, did Shallan make you laugh?
Yeah, that's it. And then no shame. She is witty and stuff like that, but man, she did not make me laugh.
I don't know if a book has ever made me truly laugh though. So
That's
that's gonna
fair.
be a tough one. But yeah, with Shallan, her chapters I just found a bit slow besides the first introduction. And with Kaladin, I really like his little arc that kind of happens here. So that one, emotional impact, I think was where a lot of it came from for me, particularly around the last chapters with his depression and in the first chapters where we're kind of seeing a change in who he was to who he becomes. And in the beginning with the prologue and the prelude, I thought those chapters were also really well done. And yeah, pretty good inciting incidents for the book to start. But yeah, that's all I got to say. My rating for that category would be a 7 out of 10. A little bit better than average, mainly coming from Kaladin's depression. But yeah, moving on. What do you think about the characters?
Characters, I'm gonna give a 6 out of 10. I don't love anybody yet. I'm invested in Kaladin and invested in Shallan's journey, I think now. Um, but yeah, I think it just comes from not having too much time to really get to know them. And I think specifically on Kaladin's side of thing, even though he's going through something that's very like you want to root for him, we don't know much about him. We just know Kaladin the slave. And yeah, we're starting to get flashbacks from with his father and where he learned like kind of his talents, I guess, and get little glimpses into the people he lost along the way. But we don't know much. So like we meet him as a slave basically, and that's all we know about him. So a situation I feel for, and he's shown perseverance, which is admirable or yeah, admirable. But I don't know if I like his character really at all yet. Shallan, actually, on the other hand, even though I don't love her story that she's going through as much, she's shown glimpses of a character that I could find very interesting. Like, you know, she kind of turned into a like not mean, but she attacked that dude who was trying to sell her the books. And that was an interesting side of things that I look forward to seeing more of from her. What about you?
Kind of like Mike Tyson side to her.
Yeah, a little bit.
But yeah, so for me, characters wise, it's a little hard to judge this because I've read the rest of the series. So I'm trying not to kind of interject my thoughts from later parts. But Kaladin, up to this point, I find him pretty compelling. His where he started, kind of at the top, sort of, and then falling down, and then now going through his depression and his suicide, and yeah, he's going through it. And then with Shallan, I think she's all right for me as of right now. I don't really find her funny, like we mentioned. And I think that's supposed to be a part of her character. And yeah, I think we just got through the introduction with her. So
Can I ask you something?
go for it.
As without anything, obviously, do you have like? Could you tell me who you like after you've read what you've read of the series already? Like more?
Yeah. So
Don't tell me why.
I'll only say of the characters you know. Because if I just throw out names of characters you don't know, it's
No, no.
not really.
Specifically between Kaladin and Shallan, actually.
Oh, love Kaladin. I really love his story. He has a really cool story. And with Shallan, she goes really cool places. Yeah, her character becomes very interesting. So
Nice.
yeah.
All right.
So for
wait.
characters,
Sorry.
go for it.
Or did you give your rating yet?
No, I was right about to.
Okay, sorry.
So for characters, I would give this a 6 out of 10, slightly better than average. I wouldn't say anything too special. I think that's just because we're just getting started. We pretty much just got over the introductions, and now we have a little bit idea of the general arc that these characters are going on. So because of that, give it a 6.
Gotcha. I think Kaladin's story. I don't want to. I was just for the. It's the. I read Name of the Wind. It's probably the series I've read before this one, closest, like fantasy wise. So I'm gonna probably judge a lot back to that one. I think Quoth, like Quoth got to a similar point where Kaladin is now in this part, you know, like all is lost, depressed, you know, just surviving. And that hit so much more for me in Name of the Wind than it does in this one. This one doesn't do it bad, but I feel like this is a very, like, yeah, that was a good job at that. You know, like I felt the despair. But then in Name of the Wind, there's this, I remember, I'll never forget the passage where he finishes telling what happens to his parents in present time, and he goes back and All it says is that like he covers his mouth and his shoulders begin to shrug, and that hit me like so much. And now I'm feeling like, man, like I wish I had that in for Kaladin's story, but I didn't. And I think it's because he chose to start where he started with his story. So that's
Yeah. And also
just
just to
a thought.
add a little comment to that. I think they're also kind of just the stories are intended to hit a little bit different. I would say Name of the Wind, as far as that part of Kavo's story, I think Name of the Wind is more like a serious drama type of a story, whereas Stormlight Archive, I would say, is a little bit more like when the Avengers was good. There
Mhm.
was emotion there. You felt what you needed to feel when you did, but it wasn't, I wasn't expecting like drama performance of the year from the Avengers, but it was good. It was still good. It did what
Yeah.
it did and it understood the context it was in. So so yeah, that would be my main feedback. Like don't expect too much of like a very, very intense drama with the
Mhm.
Stormlight archive, but it still hits though. It has some very big emotional highs in different places. And that's the same thing I would say like with the Avengers kind of comparison. Like Avengers hits on parts, and that's kind of what this story does too. So okay, you gave your number for characters or no?
Mhm.
Did
Six
I?
out of 10. You did. You said also 6 out of 10.
Oh, okay. Awesome. So moving on. What about the plot?
So plot, I'm gonna go ahead and give a 7 as well. Um, I think it's tough to rate plot at this point because it's very introductory. So I'm really going off of, do I buy into what the future I think holds? And I do. I really like where Kaladin's story has gone, where he's turned a corner and now he's like, no, like I'm not going to give up. I am going to help these people. And I'm curious where that leads. He's in a very interesting situation on the Shattered Plains with the war. We know that he's skilled to be in war, so will he get back to that? Is that going to be his way out? Um, there's a lot of little nuggets, like with the magic that's going on here, where what's Shalon looking for? I just think there's the nuggets have been laid out for me to be like, okay, I want to find out where these lead. But of course, to this point, nothing noteworthy has really happened. Um, so I'm just going off of that. What about
Yeah,
you?
for me, I rated it a little bit lower. I gave it a 5.
Mm,
Uh, I think it's good. I think it's good at what it's doing, but kind of like you said, it's more looking to the future than kind of what has happened up to this point.
hmm.
So it's not that what's happened hasn't been good, but it's been mainly introductory. Um,
Definitely.
but going forward, I think this is the point where you can already start to get excited about what's to come, especially with I think it's the last chapter of Kaladin where he's kind of like, screw it. I'm going to run this place. I'm going to be this bridge leader. And
Yeah.
just seeing him go into that and also knowing the context of what being a bridge leader is, or even just what being on a bridge crew is, that's kind of like, that's pretty, I don't know, powerful is the right word. It's a bit dramatic, but that's pretty powerful to think of, man, this guy is in a crap situation and he's going to try to lead these people to something greater. And yeah, it's kind of like that rebellious person, or I could just think of like maybe World War II movies, or just where people are like in very oppressed situations. And you have that person who's willing to stand up within all the oppressed people and kind of tell them, like, no, we can live for more than what we're living
Yeah.
for right now.
I am
So
Spartacus.
yeah, so very exciting what's coming for Kaladin. And with Shallan, same thing. It was more introductory, getting to the city. And now we kind of know where it's going, which I do think is interesting, the whole stealing the Fabrial, but it hasn't happened yet. So up to now, I would say the plot, it got the job done. It gave us a bit of a motive for each of the characters, but it's barely going to start moving from there. So
Yeah, and I think my biggest complaint from the plot, other than it being an intro, is like the pacing. Pacing is so. I think it could have been
that's
done
the
better.
next category. So we're already
Oh, it
going
is?
into
Oh,
it
okay,
then.
okay,
Yeah,
okay. All
dialogue and
right, cool.
prose.
There
Go
you
for it.
go. So, leading in, I think this is where I don't want to say the dialogue's bad because I don't think it is, but the way in which the story was broken up is not a fan right now. Like, I really think we got this is what in my head it should have been. It should have been Kaladin's introduction of like, oh man, this guy's a slave and we're traveling. We don't know where we're going. And then cut to Shallan, do her whole storyline in part one in like I think that's like 2 chapters, 3 max. And then come back to when Kaladin arrives at the plains and then tell that story out until where it gets. The way it was told was like, okay, cool, we're gonna go to Kaladin, and yeah, some times pass with Kaladin, but then we go back to Shallan, and 10 seconds have passed from the last time you saw Shallan. So it's just so like disjointed and stop and go that I think it honestly, I think it really had me struggling to get through at times.
So a bit
Like
too much cutting back and forth.
I think so. Like in a movie, I would have called it editing. You know, the editing of this movie was not the best, and I feel like that was part one as far as story, dialogue, and prose itself. I think it does a great job. So I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Like the style that he goes for is simplistic, but yet at times can be very visual. I think he does a great job at being very visual about these things. Dialogue is direct. There's not a lot of well, I guess there is subtext, but there's not overbearing. Like sometimes Name of the Wind I think can be overbearing with some things, but this one I think is very simple. I like the way it goes. It reminds me of Dune, but not as much straightforwardness. So I appreciate that. What about you? I feel like I word vomited there.
I gave dialogue and prose category a 6. Mainly it's a 6 because Shallan isn't funny. No, she's supposed to be funny, but it didn't hit for me, so I would take points for that. I think the pacing is the biggest issue here for me. I just think maybe a little bit less cutting back and forth, or maybe condensing a little bit of the Shallan stuff. Just because at the moment I don't find it as compelling as the Kaladin stuff. And that's just for me personally. Maybe there's other people who would say, no, I'm the opposite. I don't care about Kaladin. I want to get back to Shallan. I was talking to another friend of mine, and he was telling me he mainly cares about Shallan stuff, but he's also in the second book, so different part. So mainly cutting away for the pacing, and also some of Shallan's character just not really hitting at this point. I didn't really care too much about her. Kaladin, on the other hand, I really did care for. I do think both characters have their own voice. When you're in Shallan's head or in Kaladin's head, they both have their own feel. The chapters have their own feel. Shallan's a bit more lighthearted, and we don't know everything about what she's gone through just yet. But what we do know about her situation, I would say she's pretty positive. She's a pretty lighthearted person who, despite everything that's going on around her in her life, she's all right. Kaladin, on the other hand, he's kind of the sad anime character. So, but I like that. I like those characters. So for me, that would be a 6. But
Shallan is racist, though.
Shallan is racist?
Yeah, she is. She's crazy. She's crazy, dude. She has those views where she's like, okay, I guess we're just doing that right now. You know, like she's crazy. It's wild.
To her.
No, it's not just that. Like she literally sees people and she's like, they shouldn't be dressed like that. That's just like, all right, like.
But she's a little judgy.
Cool. Kudos, yeah, with her traditionalist views, which I really appreciate. I don't think she is what would you call it? Like Kaladin is someone you can root for. I don't know if I'm rooting for Shallan right now, and I like that. Like I think, I think, in a lot of people's eyes, she could be like in today's society. If you met Shallan, nobody would like her, 100%. Like she's traditionalist, she's judgy, she's rich. Like I know she's going through some hardships right now.
She's faking that. She ain't really rich.
But like to society, she seems rich, right? She's a light. She
was rich.
Yeah, she was rich. So I don't know, man. It's an interesting I am actually more interested. I'm interested in Kaladin's story right now, but I think I am more interested in Shallan's character.
Hmm.
Like I
The way
want
I'd
to. I
maybe
What's up? Go for it.
I'd say I'm rooting for Kaladin to see where he goes. Like I want to see things go well for him, but I guess I do agree a bit on Shallan's character has more potential to go to a more interesting place because I think you already can tell kind of where Kaladin is going. But Shallan, she's still an open book, but there's interesting nuggets to keep you curious about where she's going.
Well, yeah, like I can't wait to see. I really think her religion is going to be questioned, and she's going to question it, and that's going to be a very hard coming to terms with for her. Her by being taught by Yasna, the heretic. Uh, so yeah, I'm interested to see where her character goes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for the last category, world building and magic system, this is actually my highest. I gave this one an 8. And I really like the world that he's built. I think it is interesting. It's different. All of these terms that are coming out, like the shard blades and the shard bearers and the desolations, the shattered plains. Like he's already in just this part built something I can visualize. Something that if like we were in the concept room making this into a show or a movie, I already would have an idea of what I want to see as far as the general atmosphere of the show or whatever. And as far as the magic system, up to this point, you don't really know the magic system. You just get name drops, really. And we've gotten a little sneak peek of kind of Yasna using some magic, and we kind of know that there's something going on with like the shard blades and all of that. But up to this point, we don't know too much about the magic system, but the world building, I think, is really strong and it's easily visualizable. And yeah, so that's why I gave it an 8.
Yeah, I agree. This is my highest section. Also, I actually gave it a 9 because even though I don't love world building as much as I think a lot of people who read fantasy do, this I think this is one of like the textbook examples of like here's how you world build, like boom. I really appreciate that. I think he's very good how he handles the explaining versus just like info dumping on you. Because depending on the character, if Kaladin already knows, he finds a really creative way to explain it. Or you
Mhm.
just don't get it explained because Kaladin knows what it is. He's like, oh yeah, that's a that. And then Shallan, when she's coming to a place she hasn't seen before, she sees something and she's like, oh, I've read about that. And like he explains things in the way that she's thinking about what she knows. And that's how you learn about the world. And there was no paragraph of in the time of blah blah blah. Here was this, and we were doing that, and now
Yeah.
this is here. Like I think that's a very old school way of doing things. But this is nice. I like it. I like it. It's a lot more of like Name of the Wind style of world building than say, like I said, like Lord of the Rings or something. So
And
I
up to
really
this point, it's kind of, I would say it's a soft magic system up to right now because things aren't being explained. They're just happening when they happen. So I'd say it's almost starting soft as a soft one. Um, yeah, and also this is kind of Brandon Sanderson's forte. Whenever people talk about him, they love his magic systems, his world building. I mean, Mistborn is awesome. I love the atmosphere, the setting, and the magic system of Mistborn. I think it's awesome. So yeah, this is just kind of a continuation of his strength.
I will say what we got of the magic from Death, I was not the biggest fan of, and I kind of talk about it in our like chapter by chapter breakdowns, but it really slowed down the action for me to a point where like I didn't love it. Like I like in a movie where the action is like, whoa, like what just happened? Like it's 2 seconds and it's over.
So you don't like
Um,
the anime
It's not. I don't even want to say it's anime. It's just. It's. I get that he's trying to explain the magic system while he's doing it, but it takes away from the story that's actually happening, in my opinion. Where okay, like I'm learning how he's like feeling while he's doing this, like binding to or lashing to something, and then like by the time I get to what like he was the point of what he did, I was like, wait, what was he doing again? Oh, that's right, he was trying to run away from this guard.
Yeah.
And it just, I think that sequence would have played out a lot cooler, especially as an intro, if you just explained like this stone went flying backwards, and then it's like, whoa, how is he doing that?
And
And
I think if I remember properly, he does that on a character by character basis
mhm.
because yeah, so he's writing it relative to how the character would be thinking about it. Because Zeth, I believe he's a lot more tactical. So he's thinking
Yeah,
that stuff out more. Kaladin, I would say, is the same way. He's like a trained fighter. So he's going to be there. He's going to be thinking about more of the tactics behind what he's doing. So I don't remember. We'll probably come back to that as we get more action scenes, but I believe it is a character by character um, description.
yeah, and you know who I think actually does that amazing is Robert Jordan in The Wheel of Time. Like if you remember Perrin's chapters compared to Rand's chapters in fighting, and then I don't know if we really get Matt fighting where we stopped, but um it night and day difference. You can see Rand's been trained a lot more formally. So like when he's talking about what he does, which I think is what Robert Jordan does good, is you can tell, oh, this is how Rand thinks about combat because he's saying this move that like means nothing to me, but it's an art, like an art style or whatever art form, fighting form. And then you go Perrin, and Perrin's like bang bang rip tear, like crazy.
Yeah.
This one, like I feel that, or I hope that that's the case, and I get that Seth's more trained, but it still slowed down the action a lot, and I didn't love it. Whereas, like I said, in Wheel of Time, I think we get differences between people, but that action still goes, and it feels like an action sequence.
Yeah. I get you. Well, my overall Rambler rating for this section is a 6.4 once I average all the categories. So above average. I think everything was well done. There's nothing that's kind of blaring like, oh, I don't like that at all. There was just some things I liked more than others. And yeah, I mean, the story's barely starting. We pretty much just got past the very beginning, and now things are really going to start to get moving. A lot of my favorite things about this story haven't even happened, and the characters that I really really like haven't even been introduced. So yeah, there's so much more to come. At this point, man, it's you don't even know where the story's going. Still, you don't have the scope yet, and I think that's a really fun part about fantasy is it takes a little bit of time to get to the point where you understand the scope of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I'm enjoying this. This is our first time ever doing this podcast, but also kind of discussing a book in this much detail. Usually we would just call each other and kind of give our general thoughts. But it has been really cool to really dive into very, very detailed specifics. And it's made me appreciate a lot of aspects of the story that I might have just overlooked before. But yeah, what's your overall rating?
My overall rating ended up as a 7.2, which is crazier that, or it's crazy that I rated it higher than you. I wouldn't have expected that, to be honest. Um, I think the big thing that saved it was plot wise, I was looking more towards the future, as in, like, do I buy in to the future and not so much am I in love with what's happening now? Um, but I mean, I'm on board. I think that's what it's done, that's what its job was. And I honestly can't wait to read these interludes to see what they're all about too. And then I did take a little peek forward at part 2, and I saw that there's no Shalon in this part and other characters. So I am excited to get introduced to these other characters too. So I look forward to it. I'm enjoying this. I don't think it hooked me as early on as like Game of Thrones did, or even Name of the Wind, but I think I got there eventually. So looking forward to the rest.
Well, if you're still listening and you want a little bit more detail, Jacob and I are also discussing the book on a chapter by chapter basis. So you can find that on our channel. As of right now, we've only read up to part one, but we're going to be discussing the rest of the book. So that's all I got to say. You got anything?
Nope.
Okay. Well, we'll see you guys in the next video.